Well, hey, Cookster here, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to play with some science, specifically electrolysis. Electrolysis for rust removal. I'm sure most of you have heard of electrolysis, where you take a tank of water, put a piece of metal in it, hook some electricity to it with a battery charger, and it magically removes rust. Alright, time out a second, hold on. Before we get into the video, just real quick, we talk about some safety stuff. This is electricity and water, so use your common sense. If you don't have any common sense, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not trying to offend anybody. Just be careful. If you do something and get hurt, I'm not liable. I'm going to say it again. If you do something and get hurt, I am not liable. I'm just showing you how to do this and how it works. You're on your own to go off and be safe and don't be stupid. So number one, electricity and water. Be careful. Stainless steel in this process is a no-no. Stainless steel, especially if you use it for the electrode, which, you know, I even thought about it early on. And say, hey, if I use stainless, it don't corrode. Do not use stainless. No, no, no. Stainless gives off a cancer-causing, very bad, very dangerous, very caustic byproduct. Hexalevelate chromium or something. It's bad stuff. Don't do it. No stainless. Naughty, naughty. You can get on the web and read all about it. It's all across the web. People talking about electrolysis. Do not do it with stainless. You can do it with steel and cast iron and iron. Those are the three that everybody's doing and talking about. Anything else other than that, do some research. Like I said, use your common sense. This is electricity and water. It's very benign, very gentle, very safe process. The water, all the water has in it is basically soap. And washing powder, which is basically a kind of a soda. I was going to read a bunch of science stuff here for you, but I'm not going to do that. You'll get bored. If you want to find it, I'm going to give you a couple of websites to go look at and read about, and you can read as much as you want to. I've read a lot about it. It's pretty fascinating how this stuff works if you're a science nerd like me, or like I was when I was in school, back in the dark ages a long time ago. But anyway, it's a very safe, very benign process. It's slow, so you got to have patience and let it work and do its thing. This panel here that I'm about to start working on has been in the tank for about 40 hours, and that's where I got to this point here. So anyhow, let's get on to the electrolysis, and good luck with it, and I hope you enjoy this. So here we go. So obviously you need a power supply. Most people, when they do this, and I did it myself, start out with a battery charger. Just your basic 12-volt battery charger. And those work great. After doing electrolysis off and on for a few projects, I went ahead and bought an actual power supply. And if you know anything about power supplies, they're not cheap, especially the really good ones. But like everything else, stuff's made in China. It's gotten a lot cheaper. So this is a power supply I bought. I'm gonna try to zoom in where you can see and make sure you can read it. It's a 30-volt maximum. Come on, finger. It's 30-volt maximum, 5-amp maximum supply. So anywhere, and that means anywhere in those ranges of current between 0 to 5 amps and volts from 0 to 30 volts. That's your power supply. Like a battery charger runs at what, 14 volts, I think, something like that, and charges at like 2 or 10 amps. Anyway, this is a actual, bench top power supply. I think I paid $150-ish for it a couple years ago, which, if you know anything about bench top supplies, that's actually pretty cheap. Buy what you can afford. If you're going to do this if experimenting in your garage, you can use a 12-volt battery charger, no problem. Lots of people do it. I did it myself. Alright, the other thing we're going to do, the solution we make is water and washing soda, or washing powder, some people call it. This is not baking soda. Let me say it again. This is not baking soda. It's washing soda. Don't use baking soda. You got to use washing soda. I bought this off of Amazon just because I like to get stuff off of Amazon. I'm sure the grocery stores probably still sell it. If not, get it off Amazon. So you got to use washing soda. The ratio you mix the powder to water is, I use a half a cup to every 5 gallons of water. But, you know, a lot of the places I've read, they say a third cup to 5 gallons, or even some may say as low as a quarter cup, third cup, half cup. I used to use a half cup to 5 gallons because it's easy. If that's a little too much, it's certainly not hurting anything. You're not hurting anything by going a little bit over. You wouldn't want to put a cup or two for 5 gallons. That's just getting to be, you know, completely wasteful. So you got to have the water and the washing soda. You make that solution. You put your part in the water, and I'll show you what the rest of the steps are here in a moment. You'll need what's called an anode and a cathode, which is basically your positive lead and your negative lead. And the way I do it, and the way a lot of people do it, and I'm going to show you how I set my tank up in a moment, but for your sacrificial steel, which you have to use steel, like I say, I use rebar, and that works just great. So I'm going to show you my setup in just a moment. You can do this in a tank of water as small or as large as you would like. I've done it in a gallon bucket, which I don't have in front of me. I've done it in a 5-gallon bucket. I've got a 20-gallon bucket outside, and I've also used a 55-gallon drum. So I'm going to go get my tank set up, get the water in there, get all my parts and stuff moved around, and when I get ready to start hooking it up and explaining it or running it, I'll bring you back. Alright, as I'm editing my video, I'm realizing there's a lot of talking going on. I'm explaining a lot of stuff. And some people to get bored with a lot of talking, a lot of explaining. They just want the nitty-gritty details. So I'm going to stop my informational talk for a moment and just give you the details, the nitty-gritty details that you need to know. Or maybe you want to come back and reference this little section of the video if you forget. So here's the important stuff real fast. Only use washing soda. This is what I get. I get it off of Amazon. Don't use baking soda. Don't use salt. Only use washing soda, washing powder. For every 5 gallons of water, put a half a cup of washing soda. You can do the math. If you do 5 gallons, if you do 500 gallons, just use that ratio. A half a cup of powder, 5 gallons of water. Power supply or battery charger connections. Positive goes to your electrode array. Connect all the electrodes together. That goes to positive. The piece you're cleaning goes to negative. Don't reverse it. If you do, you're shedding material off your part. Don't do that. Negative goes to your part. Positive goes to your electrodes. Electrodes. Use steel, rebar, piece of pipe, whatever. Do not use stainless steel. Never use stainless steel. Use rebar. Use steel. Use iron. If you're using a adjustable supply like I am, I set mine to 4 amps. You can set it at, if you got a trickle charger, set it on 2 amp trickle charge. 10 amps will work. It may overheat your charger. Just your situation will vary. So trickle charge at like 2 amps. Mine is set at 4. Don't be stupid. This is electricity and water. Be careful. There's not enough current really here to hurt you, but don't be stupid. Don't stick your hand in the water and play just because you can. It probably wouldn't bother you, but don't be stupid. Use common sense. Oh, and only use a plastic tank, no metal. You could use glass. Glass is dangerous. Just use plastic. 5-gallon bucket, 1-gallon bucket. This is a 55-gallon drum. Hell, you could put it in a swim pool, kiddie pool. Plastic. All right, I think that's it. Now, please watch the rest of the video. I think I'm putting out some good information, and I get to show you what's going on here and how it looks and all that good stuff. So please stick around and watch the video. So thank you. Here we go. So here's my water tank for this round of electrolysis. It's a 55-gallon plastic drum. I think I mentioned it earlier. Make sure your tank is plastic. I mean, glass would work. Something inert. It cannot be metal. Anything metal will react and it won't work. So just be sure and use plastic. Plastic's the easiest. Glass is, glass is glass, so glass is dangerous. But just use plastic. You can make and you can also make your own tank. I've seen people you know, make big tanks out of plywood and wood and line them with thick plastic, make tanks that way. I saw one guy build a big tank, you know, and he lined it full of swimming pool liner part, you know, the old swimming pool liner he cut up. Just basically your tank is up to your imagination. I'm using a 55-gallon drum because I got pieces that are tall and kind of wide, and they won't fit in my smaller plastic tank, and certainly won't fit in a 5-gallon drum. 5-gallon buckets are fine for small stuff. So I mixed the washing powder with hot water from a tap in the house with 5-gallon buckets, and then put that in here, and I fill the rest of it up, obviously with a garden hose. So I'm gonna let that fill up. I'll get the electrodes out, and we'll go from there. All right, these are the electrodes for my 55-gallon tank. They're nothing more than pieces of rebar. You can see, you know, if you guys know what rebar looks like, that's rebar. Now, one thing you'll, if you don't notice, you will very quickly. Your rebar, your sacrificial electrode, and again, I forget anode and cathode, so I'm not going to try to use the wrong term. I'm just going to call it an electrode. This is a sacrificial electrode. It will, it deteriorates, it sheds its metal. That's part of the chemical process. So over time, these rods will deteriorate. See how we got full of rebar here, and they're down. They've already worn down to all the, well, not worn, corroded, sacrificed, whatever, till now it's just basically a smooth rod. You know, this is your standard 1/2-inch rebar. We're down to 3/8 here, maybe, or so. And I've got 3 of them made for that 55-gallon tank. I probably ought to have 4. Probably ought to make one more, and one day when these finally get shot, I have to get rid of them, I'll probably wind up making 4. And then I welded nuts to the top of the rebar. Now you can't just take copper wire, bare copper wire, and wrap it around the rebar, and that's how I did it to start with when I was first experimenting. But to get the best contact, just weld some nuts to your rebar, and you can bolt on your copper wire. And this is just regular Romex wire, house wiring. 14 gauge is fine. Yeah, you can use 18. I got 14 gauge hard strand copper. You know, Romex wire. It's just easier to use. So anyway, I gotta go get this set up in the tank. The part we're cleaning first is this side off my Model A. I'm gonna get all this rust off with electrolysis, and then when I can sandblast them, it'll be just so much easier to sandblast than having to fight all this rust with a sandblaster and sit there and just do this. Plus on sheet metal, you guys know sandblasting on sheet metal, you have to be careful because you can warp it. But anyway, enough of that. Let me get this stuff set up, and I'll come back for the next steps. Alright, here's my tank set up. Here's my 3 sacrificial electrodes. This is very important. They go to the positive side of your supply. The negative side goes to the part you're cleaning. Also, you want to have a very good electrical connection or contact to your wire. So I always take the grinder, and I ground the piece right here and got it good and clean. That's where I have my ground cable connected right there. And then of course positive connects to my copper leads that I made on my electrodes. So as far as a power supply goes, if you're using a battery charger, most of the ones I'm familiar with, you have a 2-amp trickle charge setting and a 10-amp charge setting. So you can run it on the 2-amp trickle charge and it works. The 10-amp setting might be a little strong. It may make your charger get hot, which, I mean, battery chargers are basically nothing but transformers. At least the older ones. These newer ones with microprocessors, they're a lot different. The old school ones, which most of you guys I'm sure are familiar with, that's just a transformer and a voltage regulator too. But anyway, I digress. So if you're using an old school battery charger, you can run the 10-amp setting. Just watch your charger. If it's getting hot and get hot to the touch, I would think I'd cut it on the 2-amp trickle charge. The process works slower, but you'll probably increase the lifetime of your charger, battery charger. Now, if you're going to do this for anything other than playing around with a part or two, if you're going to do this for any number of parts, I do recommend you go ahead and buy an actual power supply. And I also recommend on the supply you get one that has current limiting. So basically what you can do, you instead of setting a voltage range that you want to charge it, let's say you wanted to charge it at 5 volts, and the current's going to have to go up or down to match that 5 volts. And I'm not going to go into electrical theory here and confuse a bunch of you. But if you set it for 5 volts, it's got to find the current setting, and then it'll try to match the current to match the 5 volts, which is okay, and that works. But it's more critical, in my opinion. Current's what's doing the work here. The current going through your part and your electrodes and the water too. The water's also a variable. It's got resistance. The current's doing the work. So this is a 5 amp charger. I set mine, if you notice, I've got mine set to run at 4. By the way, the charger's on standby. It's not charging yet. So I have my charger set to run on 4 amps current, continuous. So it won't drop below 4 and it won't go above 4. It works on its internals. It takes whatever voltage it requires to run this amount of load in this water, and there is load in here between the water, the rods, there is the panel. There's a resistance here, and I'm not going to go into theory and try to confuse a bunch of you, and I'm sure that I'm going to try to measure all that. But there is load here. There's a resistance. So the amount of load here to run the 4 amps takes a certain amount of voltage, and the charger takes care of all that for you. You just set it on your 4 amp continuous, and it automatically adjusts the voltage for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the charger on, and I'm gonna watch what the display does. So stand by. So you see what it's doing? It's taking 4 amps basically, and it's having to run the charger at 4.63 volts to maintain that 4 amps. And that's pretty good. That means the resistance in our solution and our metal here and our electrodes is fairly low. So what's going to happen is over time, and it usually takes, I usually run these things about 8 to 10 hours. So anyway, after 8, 10, 12, whatever hours, your electrodes here will start corroding. They're collecting the rust and the crud that's offshooting from the panel you're cleaning is shooting off and being attracted to these electrodes, and it attracts that. So as the process goes on, these things start to get, for lack of a better term, corroded. They get dirty. All that crap collects on your electrode, which makes the resistance go up. So what happens is your power supply has to work harder and harder. So the longer the cycle goes, the dirtier these rods get, the more the voltage goes up. And mine will peak at 30 volts, as I said earlier. So 12 hours from now, whenever, 14 hours, I can come out here and check this after a while. And it'll hit 4 amps at 30 volts. And that means at that point, this power supply has reached all the current it can supply. The current will start dropping. And that's not really damaging that supply, but it's not good for it either. And your rate of the work that's being done is falling off significantly. So what I wound up having to do was, every night when I got finished, I'd take the electrodes out, let them dry overnight, and then every morning before you start, you clean them off with a grinder. I wish I didn't have to do that, but it's just part of the process. So that's the electrolysis process in a nutshell. So I will let this run. Let me show you what it looks like when it's running. And I got to be real careful with my camera. See the bubbles? That's the bubbles coming off of your electrodes. That means the process is working, and it's working really, really vigorously. Where'd it go? Vigorously right now, and it should be doing it on all 3 of them. And you can see the water swirling on top of the drum. That's the water currents moving. Make sure your electrodes don't, I think I already said this, but I'm gonna say it again. Make sure your electrodes don't touch the piece you're cleaning. That'll cause it short, and it stops the process from working. I imagine it's gonna take me 3-4 days to get this good and clean to where I want it. But for now, that's it. We're just gonna let it run, and when it runs a few hours, X number of hours, I'll bring you back and catch you up on the progress. So I will see you then. All right, here we are about 10 hours into the soaking process. I actually cut it off last night, got dark. So this is the second day. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier, this is not a paint stripper in the classic paint stripper sense, but when you're knocking the rust off, this does a really good job of breaking the bond between any paint that's I'll say not adhered well, like old paint. Like the paint on this car was old and cruddy. So it knocks the paint off, or it loosens the paint up real easy, so you can just about take an air hose, and I did, and blew a lot of the paint that was on this thing off. I'll show you tonight or later on whenever I decide to pull this out. I will show it to you where we're at so far. The orange crud on top, that's rust and crud. That's normal. You expect to see that. In fact, if you don't, I would venture to say after 6, 8, 10 hours, if you don't see this, you'll actually notice it in a couple of hours. You'll start seeing around the electrode first, and it builds up. If you don't see that, you probably got something doing wrong, or your part's not very rusty. You can see the bubbles here still going to town. There's bubbles under here, but you just can't see it because you can see the water moving. That's the bubbles coming up and making the water move. But we're still going here big time. But the bubbles that you see coming off of here, that's part of the way. That's not part. That's the way the process works. It breaks the rust down into hydrogen and oxygen. So that's the bubbles you see coming up, and the hydrogen is flammable. Now, I'm doing this outside, so I've got no I don't smoke, so I have really no flammable ignition sources anywhere nearby. But don't do this in a small contained room, or like a little bitty room, like a little closet or something, and don't smoke. Don't do anything, no ignition sources, no heat, no torches, that kind of stuff, because hydrogen gas will explode. So you can see the barrel's almost completely full of crud now on the top. I'll skim this off tonight when I take the piece out, just to get it out of there, because it'll settle. If you don't skim it off, it'll settle down overnight, and you'll have a bunch. You got crud in the bottom anyway, but you'll have even more crud. One more thing I forgot to show. Here's my power supply. We're up to a little over 7.5 volts, 7.7 if you want to round up volts. Still running it at 4 amps. Another thing I was doing in my reading, I was reading up on the amount of current it takes to do this. I mentioned yesterday, a lot of people use battery chargers, and they got the 2 amp trickle charge or the 10 amp fast charge, and a lot of people running on 2 amp, a lot of people running on 10 amp. A couple more of the sites that I trust their information. They're saying basically, 2 amps is probably enough to get the job done. Like say 10 amps in a small container, 10 amps is probably going to heat the water up a lot. Which at that point, all you're doing is just you transferring the extra energy into heat. It's not really doing any extra work as far as knocking the cleaning apart, because electrolysis basically works at its own fixed rate, and upping the voltage and the amperage past a certain point, you don't really get any gains out of that. You just waste electricity. And the people I was reading, and the people I kind of trust, I was saying that's around 2-3 amps. I do have mine set at 4 amps. I've been using it at 4 amps for a while now, and I like it being there. And that's where I'm going to leave it. One thing I did do different today, I turned the piece around so the rusty side, the cruddy side, is towards the 2 electrodes instead of just the 1. At some point I will go back and probably make another electrode and have 2 and 2, but I just didn't do it for this. This works. That's the latest update, so I'll be back later. Alright, here we are, next day's update. So this is about like I said, about another 10 hours. You can see the rust is starting to convert now along the edges where it's turned, you know, here's the rusty color. Starting to turn black finally. That's kind of how you know when it's done. The rust will all turn to that black color. Now I did blow it off with the air hose last night, but there's still, so it shouldn't be much surface rust. It just happened overnight. But we still got a fair amount of rust showing, you know, here and all down through here, and then right here. Now on the face side, most of the paint has turned loose now. I actually took a scraper last night, or a razor blade, and knocked more of the loose paint off. This is the section it's already come off of, and it's still got some rust showing here too. So it's still a long way. I'd say it's another 2 or 3 days at least from being done to where I'll probably stop. So I'm not going to show you the tank today. You've seen it now 2 or 3 days times. I'll get it running. I'm going to let it run again today, another 10-12 hours, and I'll probably update you again tomorrow on how it looks. So that's all for now. Alright, we're at the end of about 40 hours of soak time over 5 days. You can see the process is still working. Now I don't know how much of this crud might be from what's in the water and bubbling up versus what actually comes off the part. I don't know that much about the process. Maybe one day I'll figure that out. But if you're going by the process working, and it is still working because you can still see bubbles coming up, and you can't see the little bubbles, but they're over there. They're still going. The process is still working. So I did a bunch of reading, you know, while setting up to do this, so I could sound a little more intelligent in this video. And they say the bubbles, as long as the bubbles are working, then there's still rust there and it's still converting, and at some point the bubbles will stop. Now I don't know if that's 100% true or not. I don't, you know, I haven't run this process, you know, some crazy number of hours to try to find that out. One day maybe I will, but certainly not going to be doing it now. But I've been taking the product out every night and looking at it, and it's gotten very much cleaner. It's 2 nights ago I took my grinder and knocked the rust and loose scale and stuff off, and it looked really good then. I could have stopped, but I just went ahead and decided I'd just go ahead and run it up to about 40 hours and see how it looks. So like I said, I'll be taking it out of the tank and cleaning it off, and I'll bring you back and show you how it looks. And unless I see something I really don't like, this part will be done, and then I'll start something else. So anyway, I'll bring you back when that's ready to look at. Alright, here's my Model A cowl after about 40 hours in the electrolysis tank. I have run a grinder over it real quickly just to knock the loose scale and the last little bit of remaining paint, which was very little on there, off. So obviously this is the finished side, the outside. There is a slight amount of flash rust, and I'm talking a very small amount. When I pulled it out of the tank, I wasn't able to dry it off with air for about 30 minutes. I had some other stuff going on, so I had to wait a little bit. So it flash rusted just a tiny amount, but not much. The inside, obviously you can see there's a lot of clean metal under here now. The black areas is where the rust converted, and all up into here I obviously haven't ground or anything sandblasted in here yet. The flanges, again, that's part flash rust. That's also part just the cruddy water, you know, from the tank. I've already put the other panel in the tank this morning and started it on this electrolysis journey. But anyway, that's a huge improvement. I mean, here's the front cowl sections. They'll be going in here in electrolysis next, as soon as I figure out how to do it. I'm probably going to be cutting the feet loose, the 2 feet here. I've already got the 2 front brackets. Those will be going in a small tank, like a 5-gallon bucket size. I want to put this entire frame in a tank without cutting it, and I got to thinking about a kiddie pool. It's 5 foot across from that corner to that corner, so I can get a 5 or 6 foot kiddie pool, like a foot deep plastic pool, and that piece will fit right in there. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing. Not next, but as a project soon, we'll be doing that, and I probably will do a video on that. Maybe we'll see how the first electrolysis video goes. If I get some views and people like it. So anyway, I'll come back if and when I get to that. Hopefully I will be able to do that. So I hope you enjoyed the electrolysis video. I hope I actually taught you something. There's a lot of information I didn't cover. I tried to hit the high points, the important parts. If there's lots of information on the web. I did a lot of reading myself. There's several good websites, and I'm trying to link them either here or in the description or somewhere. A couple of them that I found that are really good. You can do as much research as you want about this. But again, electrolysis works really well. It's a proven process. It's not magic science. It's not fake ware. It's real stuff. It really works. It works. It works great. I could have sandblasted this panel straight away without electrolysis on it. But it would have taken, the sandblasting would have been so much more difficult. Would have took so much more time and sand. And I hate sandblasting anyway. So the faster I can get it done, the better I like it. Electrolysis is slow, but it's easy and it works. It just takes some time. If you're not in a hurry, like in a production shop or something, and you got time to do it, absolutely do it. So thanks for being here again. I hope I taught you something. Go try some electrolysis on your own. You'll be amazed. It hasn't got to be cars. I've seen guys doing it with tool repair, tool restoration, anything metal pretty much. Let me say it again. Do not do this with stainless steel. Stainless steel creates a caustic, very dangerous byproduct of the process, the sediment and stuff. No stainless steel. You can do it with iron. You can do it with cast iron. You can do it with iron and steel and cast iron. Do not do stainless. As I said, if you're trying to do anything other than steel or maybe cast iron and iron, get on the internet and do some reading, because stainless is a no-no. Do not do that. So as I said, I hope I taught you something. Go try electrolysis. Thanks for being here. Be sure to do all the YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, share it around, and I will catch you on the flip side. Y'all come back now, you hear? Happy electrolysis tank, y'all.